Dallas Design Sprints podcast. We've been away for the Global Virtual Design Sprint, but we're going to start recording again very soon. In fact, we're going to be post-processing a lot of recordings I did back in the months of August and September before the event really took off. One of them is Maaike Coppens. She is a conversation designer, a UX designer by trade, but she is pretty much dominating the voice sprint space. She basically empowers professionals around the globe to create meaningful voice experiences. She's all about voice user interface design, and she feels it's a crucial discipline that's going to be growing in the tech landscape coming up. And I very much align with that sentiment. She's published a number of articles on LinkedIn on how to quickly and efficiently venture into the voice space. She's done a number of podcasts recently, and she'll be doing some upcoming projects towards the latter part of this year and the beginning of next year. So here's my conversation with Maaike, and we'll see you on the other side. Where do you draw the line between simple and complex when it comes to user interface design with voice?
I think, and this is my personal opinion, that at the moment, the technology and the stage where we're at, we need to design our voice interfaces as tight as possible so that users can actually get their reply as fast as possible. Like, the thing is, we're not today, both in technology way and in adaptation way, at a stage where someone is going to sit down and have an actual conversation for hours like they would a best friend. So I think it's really important to acknowledge that and to say, okay, now we have loads and loads of people today, both in Europe, adoption is really big, that have these smart speakers in their home. They are still mainly using it for very basic use cases, setting alarms, listening to music, etc., etc. Things that are used to playing games, getting a bit of information. If we want it to go beyond that, if we want it to evolve an actual conversation, we need to make sure that these simple tasks really, really work well and that a user can get his personalized information as soon as possible. Because when you think about it, the smart speaker is in their homes. They just walk by and say, "Hey Alexa, what's the time?" Or "Hey Alexa, what's the weather like today?" Or "Okay Google, what can I visit in Boulder?" Like these kind of things. It's like a passing by thing. It's not I sit down with my computer and I start looking at things for a very, very long time. So I think the design behind it should be so elaborate and complex that for the user, like on a backhand point of view, that for the user it's super simple and they ask one question, they get their very personalized, on the spot answer right away without doing 10,000 interactions. Because the thing is, this is a new technology and we are habit people, right? So, and because we are habit people and it takes a long time to change habits, if we are going to need more time or the same amount of time to get the information as we would the way we did it before, that's to say on the web, with our smartphones, wherever, then we'll just stick with the old thing. Because it's so much easier to stick with the old thing than to learn a new way of interacting. And that's why I'm very, I think I'm very high on natural conversation rather than like telling users what to say. Or and I would say I think also that nowadays we can like studies start showing and we start seeing in user research as well that when interacting with these interfaces, people are starting to use keywords to adapt their way of speaking to make sure that the smart speaker understand what they really want. And I don't think that's necessarily a good thing because it's already a correction mechanism. Actually, it's also already a sign that it's not quite working in a very natural, simple way. It's already like we're already starting to find mechanisms to get what we want, and friction is already there.
So what kind of voice design will you be doing in 2020 around this time?
I will be doing voice design sprints, a lot of them. And I will be doing voice design sprints and I'm very particular about this because I want it to be a positive interface. And I'll tell you, so basically, I want it to be a positive interface in the sense that it is natural, intuitive interactions. That's what I'm all about. Actually, I'm all about designing intuitive conversations that people will love. And that's a kind of also why, first of all, voice design sprints, because it is a collaborative process. It's not just one designer being in Ireland saying, hey, let's do a voice design and here is how to do it. But voice design sprints are all about like getting everyone in the company involved in the design, letting everyone have their say in how it should go, because conversation is, even like Google says, it's a discipline for human-computer interaction based on human conversation. And so the thing is, that's how they put it. And I totally agree with it, because as it is based on human conversation, if it's just one person designing the thing, well, then what you're going to get is a monologue, not a dialogue. Design sprints are really, really appropriate to start the dialogue in the beginning of the process, but also during the voice design sprint. And the way I adapted it, there's loads and loads of like place for role play and having conversations. And understanding what human conversations is about, and understanding what the design principles are and the expectations from users from a psychological point of view when having a conversation. So actually, that's why I'm so very keen on doing design sprints for voice, particularly, because it helps people understand, as it is a collaborative process, and as conversation is a collaborative process as well, it really goes very well together. And because it's a new technology, it also helps bring everyone on board from the get-go, no matter what. Like if you do a good voice design sprint and you get the right team with people from marketing, with people from the tech side, with designers, you get this fantastic mix of knowledge, just all packed into one room, and that makes for the best, I would say, minimum viable experiences. Because I've seen in a lot of innovation departments, what happens is, there's a new technology, let's do a technical prototype, which basically means that the developers are going to try to figure out how it works and then put something out there without ever talking to a designer. Or what else happens is, there's this new technology, so let's just do an MVP. Let's spend 10,000 meetings and 4 months to do a minimal viable product that's really just based on what we already have as a data set, what legacy we have. And the thing is, voice is such a new way of interacting that you can't just take whatever content you already have, like pages and pages of information from a frequently asked question page, for example, which is my favorite counterexample. You can't just say, when the user asks the question to the voice interface, you can't just go and read off general conditions of sales for 5 or 6 or 7 minutes, because after the third sentence, he will already be lost and will have no idea what he or she should do. And what's going to happen is the same person is going to take up their phones and call the after sales service. And not only this time they're going to be upset because they have a question and their thing isn't working, but they are also going to be upset because their product isn't working. They have a question. They asked the voice assistant and they didn't get the answer to and they still had to call. So that makes for 7 interactions instead of just going to the website, reading what they need to do and do it.
Explain how a voice design sprint is different from a regular design sprint. how have you curated it for different activities? Can you get into that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. Google has put up a conversation design framework, which is very nice and based on the regular design sprint with a few adaptations. It talks about system persona, which we were talking about just before, actually. And so I curated it in a way that, first of all, I do an icebreaker that I designed, which is called speech dating. And this icebreaker, the speech dating icebreaker, is actually a way of getting people to, first of all, get to know each other, which is really important when you do a design sprint, get the energy up, get the spirit going. But at the same time, it introduces people to everything that could possibly go wrong in a conversation. So that makes for a very, very nice icebreaker, a serious game at the same time. Everyone starts laughing, but at the same time they start understanding, hey, designing a conversation isn't actually that easy. Because what you would think is, because we've been talking to each other for forever, that designing a conversation would be super simple, that anyone could do it. But actually, when you see all the challenges that come with a conversation, then they start realizing, oh my God, this isn't going to be as simple as we thought it was. So that's kind of, it also helps them, it also helps manage expectations a bit around voice technology. And then after that,
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Do you do the traditional activities around making a map or ideating on Tuesday, like you normally do in the design sprint, when it comes to storyboarding or prototyping? Does that process different from what you would normally do? I imagine it would be. You'd be either making a skill or something to kind of emulate what you think would be.
Yeah, exactly. So actually, what happens after this, icebreaker on the first day, of course, then the lightning talks and the expert reviews come from both user insights from the company side, as it usually does, but there's also a bit of a design talk that I added, which exposes people, which helps people better understand this voice technology. Because as it is a new technology, as it is a new way of designing, you have to kind of educate people around principles, about good best practices, etc., etc. And then we go into very more basic activities, which are based around, okay, the challenge, what are we going to do with this new technology? And it's all about brainstorming then, and what kind of skill do we want to be building with all the information we got from the expert reviews. And one thing I use for people to be able to think about it in a more concrete way, when we're starting to narrow it down, converge a bit better. So when everyone comes up with 10,000 good or bad ideas, basically around what the skill or the action should be about, I then give them they have a template of a voice skill description, how it would appear in the skill store or the Action Explorer store for Google. And they have to kind of fill in the gaps, what is the description, what it is for, and what are the example phrases. How am I going to call this skill? How am I going to say, okay, Alexa, talk to blah, blah, blah. Or, okay, Alexa, ask blah, blah, blah for this thing I defined. And so everyone does these individually. Making their, I call it the dream skill, the dream skill. And then we go around actually and we do dot voting on which ones they think are best to explore later on. And then in the second, in the more second part, when it's all about defining, in the actual conversation design sprint, there's a lot of things about user persona, system persona, Amazon does a bit more around situational design, which situation your user is in, etc. I'm not a big fan of personas, but we've already discussed this. I do workshops more around tone of voice. Like, is it a friendly tone of voice, a more serious tone of voice? I have a framework that kind of lets them choose between like two very opposite points of view, which is based on the Nielsen-Norman framework for tone of voice. And then I also have cards, which they do a card sort of card sorting to really define into detail the tone of voice. And on these cards, there's like tones of voices like ironic, friendly, gross, profane. Which is actually a funny thing, because a lot of companies, they all go laughing and say, well, we won't make our voice interface swear or anything. But I still put it in there because it makes them think about how friendly they want their tone of voice to be. Like how serious they want it to be, kind of liberates the mind, thinking, okay, we can do, like, there's this very negative thing that we see as very negative. So what kind of positive thing do we want to put behind it? I knew of one voice interface, which was over the phone. I don't remember the name, but I knew of one that was you could call the phone bot, and you would insult it and it would insult you back. And it was actually, the idea behind it was, I think, because I had nothing to do with the design or the production, I just know it's out there. The idea behind it was that some people kind of need to load off like steam when they're coming home from work, and then they called them on the way home, and then when they got home they were all like relaxed faced because they had gotten all of the negativity out. Well, anyway, so then once they've got defined their tone of voice, they've defined what the use case is going to be, and then what comes next is the welcome message, and this is where the role playing starts. So everyone writes down the welcome message they think is going to be great, and then we go out and do role plays, and they test it with like other people. They test the conversation, and what they see most of the time is that the way they thought it was going to go is not at all the way the person like actually replies, and
they actually act as what you're saying is that the people on the team, to prototype the script or to prototype the voice.
No, they don't prototype. They just design it. They
essentially become the person that interacts with the tester.
Yes.
But they have their own script.
One part of the team becomes the user, and the other part becomes the interface. And then they have the conversation, and then they see how they kind of need to adapt what they actually thought. But this is only for the welcome message, like the hello, welcome to blah 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 skill. This is what you can do. How can I help you today? And so once they get their welcome message really tight, really right, and in the right tone of voice. And then they build it up from there. And at the end of the day, at the end of day 2, they actually have a conversation from A to Z that they've role-played several times. So to make sure that it's absolutely in line with the tone of voice they defined, to make sure it's in line with the expectations they were having. And then what happens on day 3 is the prototyping and actual tools like Adobe XD, Torture.io, VoiceFlow, etc. And this doesn't need to be done with the team. Loads of the times I do it with the team, because a lot of the teams want to learn about prototyping for voice. So at the same time, they are kind of learning about prototyping for voice. So it depends, but they don't necessarily have to be there because sometimes they just don't have the time to do 4 days in a row, right?
When do you, so after you get done with prototyping, how often do you see these voice design sprint prototypes going to market and being tested with real customers?
So tested to the customer as well. User testing happens on day 4. And it either happens with the prototypes we did on day 3, or if all the prototypes didn't really get finished in a digital way. What we sometimes do also is Wizard of Oz testing. So Wizard of Oz testing is a user testing method that enables, is really adapted actually for voice because there is the user that interacts with an artifact which represent Alexa, or sometimes it's a Pringles box. Loads of the time it's a Pringles box because it's like very close to a voice interface. And then the tester is actually behind a curtain acting as if he was the interface. So the testing already happens on day 4. And then basically what happens is from those tests, basically with 5 users, same thing as in the regular design sprint really, for that part. And then in the afternoon we debrief on what the user testing said and whether or not we're going to go to market. What I can say is I've done voice design sprint in a few cases. A few cases where it was like, we don't know what to do with voice, please help us out, let's strategize around it, and let's like actually do something about it and see why, how, and what we're going to do.
Do those strategic discussions that happen around the execution of the voice design sprint, are they similar to what I normally hear myself with planning out the overall execution of a regular design sprint, meaning that there's a bit of orientation in the beginning, then there's the design sprint, and then finally there's either the build or the testing in a real world environment to see if what happened in the design sprint has actual traction when outside that construct.
So the thing is, what happens is with these very new, like with voice design sprint, where the company doesn't already have a skill, where they haven't experimented before, what usually happens is after they do a small build for the minimum viable experience we designed during the voice design sprint, and then little by little check out what traction they get. From what I've seen from companies I've worked with that on the voice design sprint for skills that they already have and they feel are not getting enough traction, is what usually happens is that after the voice design sprint, they go, oh, well, we did this entire roadmap, but we now realize that we need to do all of it all over again because the voice design sprint helped us be more aligned about what we want amongst different services. And also now we understand better what voice is all about. So now we understand that this very complex, confusing use case we did in the beginning wasn't perhaps the right idea, but the thing we came up with in the voice design sprint is so interesting, so let's do that now. Which always makes me feel bad because I feel like I went in there and kind of stirred around the soup, and then they kind of have to do all their like road mapping all over again. But in the end,
I'm out of here. I can't be here. Yes, figure it out. Sorry.
But he's really. But on the other hand, they're all also very grateful because they say, well, it gave us a totally new perspective, and the fact that we all work together got us really around that, like aligned around this new technology, because now we all have the same amount of understanding of how it works. We have the same insights into what we want to do, and we all work together to get it done. And what I would say, what I would emphasize is that it's so super important to have tech people in a voice design sprint. First of all, alignment, of course, but second of all, they're the people who know what today's limitations and challenges are with this technology. They know what is going to be possible or what is not going to be possible, what is a dream and what is actually reality from a technical point of view, how easy or how hard it is going to be to build, in how much time, etc., etc. And it involves them in the entire process. It helps them see from a design perspective why certain things are important to users as well. And it avoids the fact that you go off designing a voice skill that is in your mind superb. You've done user testing. You see that, okay, users could definitely go with that. And then you hand it over to the development team, and they go, well, to date, what you just did with voice, well, we're not going to be able, it's not possible. Like what you're asking here, certainly it will work if this was just HTML and web and whatnot, but with voice, today, the recognition is not up to the point that this could possibly go in a very good way. So the fact that you have tech people integrated in a sprint helps you with getting things getting things more into a reality perspective, I would say. And sometimes what happens, what I do is that you have in a regular sprint, right? The regular design sprint, you have everyone that's dot voting, and then you have the deciders that have a few more dots to vote.
It raises the question, if I wanted to do my own voice design sprint, what would I need to do?
First of all, what you need as a team, and this is my opinion, because
and a very valuable one, by the way.
This is my opinion. So that's what you need in the room is people from the marketing team. Like if we're going for a voice design sprint with a brand, definitely people from the marketing team, people from the design team, UX designers. They have all the knowledge about users and all the things they did before. Third of all, someone from the innovation team, because a lot of the time this is where the asks are coming from at the moment, because it's still very new technology. So 1, 2, 3, 4 project managers, obviously, and then tech people, as I said, people from the IT, which are going to be putting all of the things together. They know what data is available, what data is not available. Because with AI, a lot of the information you'll be giving out, if it's just simple yes and no answers that you're going to predefine, if you're actually going to be using dynamic data, they are the people that are going to tell you, okay, that's data we can get and just reconstitute because it's labeled right in our databases, or okay, that's never going to happen because our databases just are not adapted to it. And so basically what I was going to say just after, before you interrupted me, is what I often do in the dot voting sessions is after the how might we, after the brainstorming sessions, I actually give the tech people a sorting task where they sort like everything that is possible. And I use the now, how, wow framework for this. So what they could possibly technically do like now, tomorrow with little effort, which they think might be possible, but still they have to look into how it works, how it might work. Like this would take some more exploratory work from them. And then the wow is about, okay, it's going to take some effort, but we really think we can do it. And so it's the now how wow framework is a good framework for that, because it kind of takes away from the very binary possible impossible, because if you do it in the possible impossible way, what happens is then everyone looks at the developers and say, oh, they're just spoiling all our fun. But if you use the now how wow framework, the things that are not possible kind of get forgotten about, because it's all about like, okay, this is more difficult, this we can do now without much effort, this we can do, this will have great impact, and we don't have to put much effort. This is the wow, right? So it's all about, but as I said, I'm a positive kind of person, so I try to use only positive frameworks in the workshops I do.
I promise to never interrupt you ever again.
No, don't say that. Like, you need to interrupt me because I could go on and on and on about this.
Well, let's ask this question then. If people want to know more about what you're doing in the future and want to pay attention to upcoming activities and events that you get yourself involved with, where on the interwebs should they go find out more?
So on the interwebs, they can find me a lot on LinkedIn, where I'm at under my name, which is Maaike Coppens, which I'm sure you're going to be putting a link into wherever you're like posting this to, because otherwise no one is going to be able to find me. Yeah, that's because I'm a very international girl. I was born in Belgium. I've lived in the UK for a few months. I lived in Germany, and now I'm living in south of France. So yes, that's why I care about internationalization so much. So LinkedIn, definitely. I also have a Instagram under M Creations, which is the name of my company that I own, and that's on Instagram, so mcreations.io. Yeah, and that's basically it. LinkedIn and Instagram. That's where my attention is.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Maaike, thank you very much for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate having a conversation with you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for tuning into the Dallas Design Sprints podcast. If you have a question or comment for me, feel free to reach out at robert@dallasdesignsprints.com. You can find me on the web just by doing a search for Robert Scrobe, Dallas Design Sprints, or the Global Virtual Design Sprint. You can also hunt me down on Pinterest, Facebook, LinkedIn, TikTok, Reddit, and a whole bunch of other social media channels. Just look me up and we can have a conversation. Thanks again for listening. Talk to you next time.